Well, I'm Dr. Bob Thomas. I am a biologist who is the director of the Center for Environmental Communication in Loyola School of Mass Communication. And the reason a biologist is in this position is that it's the science side of me that puts me there. And my job basically is to train mass communication students, that is, students that are in focusing on journalism, public relations, and advertising. It's to train them how to cover the environment, how to understand the environment, how to research it, how to communicate about it. Well, in my opinion, first year experience is supposed to, like everything else in college, to educate the students, but it's also supposed to excite them, to give them something more than maybe what they came out of high school learning, and to show them a different way of thinking, a different application of knowledge, to teach them how one applies knowledge professionally, and then to take it to, since I'm in communication, to take it to a national, international scale and talk about how these issues are perceived around the world. Typically, freshman classes are designed to give students the basis upon which they build through their next 4 years. And I won't say that FYE courses don't do that, because of course they do, but they're really meant to engage the students quickly, and to take them away. You know, where a student comes in and they took English in high school for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They will have, many of them, taken a foreign language. In their freshman year, they take a foreign language. They took mathematics, they took history, they took the basic educational courses. And when they get into those classes, I know at Loyola those classes can be quite stimulating. I mean, the professors are just really excellent in what they're doing with them. They're certainly not teaching them like high school students. They're taking them to a new level in that field. But a lot of the students see their freshman courses, regardless of the field, as a continuation of what they did in high school, and maybe being more intense, but still being a continuation of the same type of information. The FYE courses in general jump freshmen directly into fields that they have not necessarily studied, and give them an opportunity to really think deeply about issues that they haven't before. For many of them, you know, if they didn't really choose to be in this class, if this wasn't their number one choice, it may have been an afterthought that, well, I'll put that one number 3, and because of scheduling, they end up in it. Some of those students come in at the beginning and they're kind of, you know, wincing and saying, well, I don't know if this is really going to excite me. Well, it's our job as professors to turn them on and to show them relevance of what we're teaching, and to show them how they can use this information not only throughout their lives, but also in the other courses and through their educational process in college. Well, critical thinking simply teaches them a number of steps on how to acquire information and piece that information together, and then to apply it. I actually have start all of my classes with a slide that has 9 steps of critical thinking. And they're the obvious things, like looking for unintended consequences, learning to connect the dots, things like that are obviously a part of any definition of critical thinking. But then at the end, I sort of get Jesuit with them. We talk about the importance of understanding in critical thinking the role that they need to play in the process. I talk to them about the importance of finding good leadership to, if you're going to be successful in using critical thinking. And then the last one is one of the cornerstones of a Jesuit education, and that is that learning how to apply the concept of social justice in their critical thinking. So really, my critical thinking thing kind of drags out a little bit, but what I do is the beginning of it is the general steps of critical thinking, but at the end of it, I talk about how you apply it in policy development, resolving conflicts, making society better, applying the knowledge that you learn all the way through your education at Loyola. There is a workshop that a lot of the professors go through where they examine not only the techniques of delivering the information, but on testing, and on overall evaluating the students, and in total how to deliver the product. And I think that is special because an awful lot of university professors come right out of college and become a professor never having taught, or certainly never having been trained in teaching. And so the training that FYE teachers get before they come into the classroom is invaluable. And then there are meetings and things throughout the year where we share stories with one another and talk about successes and challenges and things like that. So I think the professors that are taking part, number one, they're stepping out to teach beyond the norm. These FYE courses are not what you would call a traditional load. In other words, they kind of are out, even though the field is inside of what I do, it's a little bit outside of what I was doing before these came on campus. And so that's important to understand. But I think it helps the professor kind of stretch their capabilities. It gives them more training. And then when they get in there and see those excited students, it sort of takes us to another level of teaching. And I love it because it's a course that I was able to develop in an area where I think students need an education. And it's not necessarily something that's a mold that where we have to teach certain types of courses. Nothing wrong with that. We all do it. It's the way our educational system works. But it gives me a chance to kind of step out with a small group of students and take them on an educational and discussion journey that is just fun. And it's fun to watch how they, as most of them being 18 years old, how their minds process information. And it's fun to watch them make the adjustment from being a high school student to being a college student. When I talk to freshmen, one of the things I like to do is to first ask them if they know the difference between being a high school student and a college student. And to follow up on that by saying, do you know the difference between a high school teacher and a college professor? What the demands are? And they don't, because nobody sat down and told them that. And then I like to talk to them about, I said, I understand that you're sitting in that chair thinking of yourself as a student just like you did last year in your senior year in high school. I'm a student, I got a long education ahead of me, so I go to class and I learn things and I have to pass tests and write papers, and then I kind of move along. But I tell them, I want you to understand, when I look at you in that chair, I'm seeing a professional in a field who's in the first level of training. Because the same thing will happen when you graduate and you get your first job. You go to that job, you will in your heart know that you're a professional, regardless of what it is. You've now graduated, you're certified, and you're a professional. And you understand that I'm going to learn every day on this job to be a better professional. And usually, whoever you work for, whatever your profession is, they're going to send you to workshops to get better. Well, guess what? This is a workshop as a professional in what you intend to be. And so I expect you to perform that way. I expect you to come here excited. I expect you to come here dedicated. I expect you to come here knowing that what we're going to talk about in this class is something that you may well apply the rest of your life. And that's always a really fun conversation to have with them. And what we do with a room full of parents is that we basically share with them some of the same things that we share with their young adults who they're sending out to college. Because what the parents are sitting out in the audience wanting to know is, are they going to get a good education? Are the people that teach them going to care about them? And then the big gorilla in the room is, when they graduate, will they get a job? So I always try to talk about how these freshman year experience courses are for many of them, the first course that gets them really excited about college. Because again, I remember when I was a freshman, listen, I had good teachers and I learned a lot in my freshman year in those basic courses. But the excitement wasn't about my classes. The excitement was about being away from home and being a little freer, growing up. and getting ready for the next round of courses that are going to be the things that I really, really, really want to take. And it's important for those students to have something that hooks them right away. And that's one of the things that these FYE courses were designed to do. I mean, especially when you look at the breadth of the topics, oh my gosh. I mean, they're atypical. I mean, there are things like in a criminal justice course where they talk about murder, basically the sociology of murder. Well, you'd think, oh my gosh, what a dreadful topic. Hey, that's life. That's something that people want to know about, and they want to understand the mind of different types of people and why they do things. My course is Spinning the Planet. It's where we look in communications. We take environmental topics and we look at different sides of the issues, how people view them differently, and we talk about why they view them differently. And we talk about, we critique them in class. And we end up a lot of times with some of the students voting to be on one side and some of the students voting to be on the other side. But that's what people do within education. We talk a lot of time, spend a lot of time talking about how the brain works and how different people in the room are going to process information differently because their brain is wired a little differently. And we also talk about worldviews and how they developed them. And for many of them, it's the first time they think about, well, gosh, I had these basic values and thoughts. Never really thought about where they came from. So we spend an hour talking about that. And it's all done to set them up so that they're ready to launch into abstract discussions, something that some of them haven't done in high school. Some of them have come in and they have a lot of experience in that already, but some of them haven't. I noticed that in the very beginning in these classes, it's inevitable that you have some students that didn't get first choice, but they're there because they were assigned. And they might be sitting there wondering, how am I going to get through this semester? But we try to make the discussions fun and relevant. And by doing that, having the freedom to do that in an FYE course where what I have to accomplish that semester is what I want to accomplish with them. In other words, I'm not having to get them from point A to point B so the next professor can pick up at B and take them to C. I just have to get the points across that I intended in this course. And by making it fun and stimulating, hopefully intellectually stimulating, and stimulating a lot of conversation among the students in class, we tend to do that. So it's fun. What we do is we have a book that looks at different sides of the issues. It has essays. It'll take something like, should we rely on nuclear energy? And there'll be a little essay in there that kind of sets the stage and talks about what the past has been and what some people are saying. Very generally gives them a background. Then they'll read an essay that's very pro-nuclear energy. Then they'll read an essay that's very anti-nuclear energy. And then there's a conclusion written by the author of the book who kind of brings it back together. And that's sort of what we do in every class. Every class has a topic that we talk about, and we first talk about the issue, then we talk about the antis and the pros, and then we say, where do y'all stand on this? And that's when the real discussion begins, where they start saying, well, I'm for this, and I think this, and no, you can't think that, and they talk to one another. A lot of discourse in the class, just among the class members. But we, in my class, we're covering things like CAFE standards in cars, biofuels, the future of oil, environmental catastrophes, Superfund sites. And each of these we take the overview, pro and con, and conclusions approach to it. I also try to get them on the internet, Googling and searching the web for these topics as well, because the book is limited, and they need to go out and research things that they're interested in themselves. I think a lot of them have their eyes open. Imagine this, being 18 years old, and the first full class is about how your brain works and why you tend to do some of the things that you do. We have a little game that we play that kind of lays out for them, whether they tend to be more creative, more socially concerned, more analytical, more structured, and why that sort of directs the way they approach issues. And then when we lay on top of that the discussion of worldviews and how they're developed and why you might have the one that you have, then they start to fold a couple of concepts together with examples that I give them about how this makes them approach issues the way they do. It's not accidental that if you're more conservative, that you tend to approach almost every issue from a conservative perspective, or if you're more liberal, that you approach it from a more liberal perspective. That's because of some of this, some of the way we've learned to approach issues, but also there's some hard wiring involved. And we kind of, that first few classes, we seek out why are we this way and how did it happen? And then they ask me, can it change? And we discuss that. But a lot of them come in being little models of their parents, and they start getting into classes where their understanding is broadened, and they start to, yes, they question their values, they question their belief systems, they question a lot of things about the way they think, and it's a very healthy thing. So it's exciting to them, I think, to go through that, and they do on their final. I get a lot of feedback about how they approach issues now, and they'll often say things like, well, I used to think such and such, but now I'm thinking more about another way of looking at that. And it's not me trying to take them in a certain direction, ever. I try my best not to do it. Matter of fact, the first class, I tell them a lot about myself. I tell them my politics, I tell them my religion, I tell them some of my experiences, I tell them some about my family life, and I say, now, why am I telling you this? And it's because I don't want you to try to second guess why I'm saying things up here. And I do want you to know this, I guarantee you can have a diametrically opposed opinion on everything we talk about from me and still make an A in this course if you can justify it. If you can explain it and justify it, you'll make an A in this class even if you disagree with everything that I say. And I think that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. I've always believed that one can really learn to teach. And of course, if you're a teacher as long as I've been, you pick up clues and hints and things from your colleagues all the time. I mean, we're sitting around talking and somebody says, well, I've tried this, and I try it and it works, and I sort of incorporate that into my game plan. But I also believe that there are people that are born teachers. They're born communicators. They just, something about their empathy for their students and their interest in sharing information makes them born teachers. And my wife's a professor as well. She's been a professor for 33 years. And she and I, of course, have always compared notes. I have another daughter who's a professor at a university, and we talk all the time. Matter of fact, we teach a course together, and that's a real thrill for me. And so, you just you have to work at it. But I do think that there's some things that you're born with, some skills you're born with that help you be a better teacher. I did have great teachers, and I had a number of them that I'll always consider role models. I remember the last course I took in my career in school was a course I was really excited about just because of the title, and I liked the guy that was teaching it, and I loved it. I mean, I was early for every class. I never missed a class. I was just always excited about it. And when I was studying for my final, I went into my wife and said, this is really strange, but this course that I love so much, that all semester I've said is the best course I've ever taken in my career, I didn't learn one new fact. But this man taught me how to think differently. And that had a lot to do with the way I teach. The great thing about being human is being able to look at information and process that information, hopefully for the public good, but also for your own good. And I think too often, I mean, all of us can look back on teachers that we wouldn't consider stellar, And those were the ones that were up in the front going, wah, 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 and you couldn't wait to get out. But the ones that were able to share interesting stories and applications and relevance and able to connect the dots on things you'd never thought about, the ones that could tell you something and you'd say, oh, wow. I mean, you get those aha moments in good classes. And that's really what I strive for. You know, nobody's 100%. And I'm sure that I have students that are sitting there going, when will class be over? But it's not because I didn't try. But no, I mean, all of us who are professors, if we're hitting on all cylinders, we're having students come back while they're here to take other courses, to sit down and talk about their career, to even if they're not one of your advisees, they come back to just talk to you, and you know that when they do that, you know that you got through to them, that you care about them. And then, of course, there are always those great stories of people years and years later who come up to you, and every teacher treasures every one of those conversations, and they can almost tell you what was said in every one of those conversations, so it's fun. Yeah, I was in IHOP about a month ago, and when I moved to New Orleans in 1977, I did a postdoc at LSU Medical School in biochemistry, which was not my field. I mean, I was there to learn, and because of someone retiring suddenly, and me having a lot of teaching experience, I taught nursing biochemistry and organic chemistry for 1 year. And boy, did I have to work to do that. I loved every minute of it. And a teacher came up to me, a lady came up to me at IHOP and said, I don't want to bother you, but I was one of your students in 1977. And she said, I have modeled my teaching after that class my whole career. She says, I've been someone who trains nurses during my nursing profession. And it was such a pleasant conversation. And then she returned to her table, and when we got ready to leave, I found out she'd picked up my check. What a wonderful gesture. I'm going to go to school on that. That was such a wonderful thing she did. But she really, really had appreciation in her eyes. And that's when it pays off. And every teacher knows that, because every teacher, I hope, is getting those kind of conversations. These are just sort of lagniappe. Take them to another level. Give them something new. Get them turned on this semester so that next semester they come back turned on, and then they stay in their sophomore year and their junior year and their senior year and graduate and go on to productive lives.